Mercedes is the only car maker out there who is producing diesel plug-in hybrids, rather like this E300DE. Mercedes is also the only maker out there that can offer you a particular model, such as the E-Class that we have here, and then ask whether you would like the plug-in hybrid with a petrol or diesel engine. That could be a tricky question for a lot of buyers because these two are so closely matched. Not only do they cost much the same to buy, they get the same official electric running of up to 34 miles. So you might think that the diesel would be the no-brainer because of course it offers better real-world economy and lower CO2. But the petrol gets a bit more performance, it promises to have better refinement, and it doesn't come with that stigma of uncertainty that you get with diesel, unfortunately anyway, in 2020. So it's not an easy decision to make, which is why we have got these two here to drive them back to back, see if there's any differences on that front, and to pull apart the company car costs that will be critical to a lot of people considering one of these cars. So let's go out there and get on with it. We'll start with the company car stuff because that is where the bulk of these sales will go. The simple truth is that they cost virtually the same. As of April 2020, both the E300DE and the E300E currently fall into the same 10% tax band. That rises one tax group per year for the next 3 years, so a 40% taxpayer in England will pay between £2,100 and £2,500 per year in company car tax for the next 3 years, assuming you go for the AMG line premium trim that we're testing here. There is an aspect of uncertainty over how tax costs might rise for plug-in hybrids and whether the UK government might differentiate between diesel plug-in hybrids over petrol. But with tax costs confirmed for these cars, including the RDE2 qualified diesel of the E300DE up until March 2023, it seems a safe bet for the foreseeable. Head to DrivingElectric.com for a full guide on company car tax. In terms of how these two compare on fuel economy, the first thing I would say is completely ignore the official MPG figures because on plug-in hybrids they are just so misleading. I've lived with the diesel plug-in hybrid E-Class for over 4,000 miles now, and I can tell you that once you're out of electric running, you're going to do around about 48 mpg if you spend a bit of time on the motorway. That might dip to even below 45 mpg if you spend most of your time around town and that kind of thing. That's not bad, but many will see the same from a non-electrified diesel, so it's understandable why you might be a little disappointed. Fuel economy in the petrol E300E is significantly worse. We achieved only 31 mpg over a similar mix of motorway, with a bit of rural roads and quite a lot of town driving. What we can say is that the E-Class plug-ins both get the same 13.5 kWh lithium-ion battery with a usable capacity of 9.3 kWh. That feeds a 121 brake horsepower electric motor, and both will deliver some 18 to 22 miles of electric running in the winter and with a few motorway miles included. Warm weather will see that range improve by as much as 5 miles or more. Otherwise, tyres, servicing and running costs promise to be very similar between the two, even for private buyers, although notably the diesel plug-in hybrid sits 3 groups higher for insurance and is also set to be worth less after 36,000 miles in 3 years. In terms of the cost to the company of running these two cars, they are much closer than you might imagine. Of course, the diesel costs less to fuel, but because the petrol car actually is about 3 groups lower on insurance and because it holds its value better, assuming a 3-year, 30,000 mile operating cycle, we estimate that they're going to cost around about £11,500, and that's with all the costs inclusive, so maintenance, servicing, including paying for fuel and all of that. And they really are very close, so that's a bit surprising, but there you have it. There are a few differences in these two beyond which pump you fill up at. The petrol E300E gets a 208 brake horsepower turbocharged 2-litre petrol engine as opposed to the 192 brake horsepower diesel in the DE, but both get 700 Nm of torque and will do 0 to 62 miles per hour in under 6 seconds. Both also get the same 121 brake horsepower electric motor that's built into the gearbox and, together with the combustion engine, sends power to the rear wheels. Of course, these two are very similar to drive, but first thing to mention is that this petrol test car has got 19-inch wheels and it's on run flat tyres, while the diesel car we've got is on 18-inch wheels and it's not on run flats. It's got chunkier sidewalls, so they're not quite like for like in that respect. Even so, you can feel that the nose on the petrol is just a little bit lighter. I'm not sure you'd notice it if you weren't driving them back to back, but there is definitely a slightly more fleet-footed feel to the way the petrol turns into a corner than there is on the diesel, so there is definitely that to it. I would say the petrol is a fraction more refined, but again, neither of them are noisy cars, and I'd say there's actually nothing in it in terms of a steady cruise. They're both great cruising cars. It's more about the around town stuff when you get a little bit of diesel grumble as the engine kicks in on the DE, predictably. So, you know, I don't think the refinement in the diesel is going to be a deal breaker at all, but it is better in the petrol. In terms of ride comfort, I'd definitely go for 18-inch wheels if you can, because I'd say that this petrol car on its bigger wheels, it just picks up the high frequency stuff a little bit more on the road. You're a bit more aware of it. The only other thing that I would say really characterises the E-Class plug-in is the brake regen, because it's got a very clever system that it can tell if there's a car in front, it can also tell what the speed limit is, and it can tell if there's a junction or a corner coming up, and it will use all of that information and it will automatically up the brake regen as you're coasting if it thinks there's a junction coming up or any of that stuff. Basically, you can just ignore it and let the car do its own thing, but it is a defining factor that you feel like the car can be a little bit nannying sometimes, because it's varying that brake regen force all the time, and that can feel a bit odd at first as well. So it's just a really big factor of the car, and having spent a lot of time in the E-Class plug-in hybrid, it isn't a problem because you do get used to it and it bleeds in really smoothly, and you get to a point where you actually just live with it and you quite enjoy it. But definitely at first, it can feel like it's a bit intrusive. Other than that, it does all the standard things you expect a plug-in hybrid to do. It can charge the battery, it can save the electric battery charge, and if you've got a route in the nav, it will intelligently juggle the powertrains to get the best efficiency. So it's a very, very clever thing and a very comfortable thing, and I like it a lot. But in terms of the way they drive, I think the petrol car is just a little bit better. The E-Class plug-in hybrid excels when it comes to the quality feel of its cabin and superbly comfortable and supportive seats, so there's no shortage of the general lustre that you expect from a premium executive. Where it does disappoint is in the boot space, since the boot floor is eaten up by an intrusive battery housing. Even the estate version, which is only offered as a diesel, has its boot compromised by this shelf of batteries. So if you do want a big boot in an executive plug-in hybrid, check out the Volkswagen Passat and Skoda Superb, or there are plenty of great posh plug-in hybrid SUVs including the Volvo XC60 and Audi Q5. Diesels understandably have a poor reputation for their impact on air quality, but the reality is that the best modern diesels are often just as clean as equivalent petrols. That's very much the case for the E300 diesel here, which performed just as well as the petrol E300 in independent particulate emissions testing. But that doesn't change the uncertainty over how legislation might change towards diesel in the future, especially in terms of company car costs, VED road tax and the cost of diesel fuel itself. It's this uncertainty over how harshly legislators might penalise diesel that is the real stranglehold on this efficient fuel. And that is a real shame, because the diesel E-Class plug-in makes a lot of sense to a lot of people. People like me, actually, who do a lot of short journeys in the week and probably do high mileage at the weekend to see family or do the occasional long work trip. So if you are after the lower company car tax of a plug-in, but you do high mileage and you want that economy, there really isn't anything else quite like the E300DE. It's just great. But this is a battle of marginal differences. And I think the fact that the petrol car is a bit quieter, slightly better to drive, slightly cheaper to insure, slightly better on depreciation, and overall it turns out not far off the diesel for overall life costs, whether you're a company car user, a company itself, or indeed a private buyer, I think that does give it the edge. So yes, I think this is a closer match even than we thought it would be. And if you are considering the two, then I would give the nod to the petrol. Head to DrivingElectric.com for all of the electric and hybrid car advice, news and reviews you could possibly want. And check us out on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. While you're here, don't forget to hit subscribe on our YouTube channel.